There's a quiet kind of pain that many men live with. It's not loud, it doesn't scream for attention. It's the kind of pain that settles deep in the chest, a dull, persistent ache because they feel unheard. Not misunderstood, unheard, as if their voice never quite lands, as if they speak and the words drift out like mist vanishing before they can make contact with anyone who matters. And if you're listening to this now, perhaps you know exactly what that feels like. You've spoken in rooms where your words felt empty, where your intentions were misread, or worse, ignored. You've been on dates where you tried to say something real, but couldn't find the words. Or maybe you didn't even try because you've learned that speaking up just leads to being judged, shut down, or seen as weak. Let me tell you something you might not have heard before. Your silence is not who you are. It's just who you've learned to be. And if no one's ever told you this, it's not your fault. Most boys grow up with a very limited script. Be strong, be cool, don't cry, don't talk too much, don't feel too much. And slowly, that script carves out your voice, not just your tone or pitch, but your ability to speak truth, to say this is me, to be heard without having to perform. And when a man loses his voice, truly loses it, he doesn't disappear all at once, he fades, he might still talk. He might still joke, but underneath he's quiet emotionally, disengaged, numb, and the tragic thing is, so many men believe this is normal. They believe connection is supposed to feel distant, that dating is just a game, that friendship is surface level. That being a man means holding everything in. But let me ask you, what if that isn't strength? What if that's suffocation? Because when you don't speak what's inside, the world can't reflect anything back to you. So your life becomes a kind of emotional echo chamber, where the only voice you hear is doubt. This is the silent crisis, and it doesn't show up in grand dramatic ways. It shows up quietly, in the text you don't send, in the apology you swallow, in the passion you never share, in the dates that go nowhere because your real self never showed up. But here's the truth, and I say this with love, not judgment. No one is coming to find the words for you. No one can hear you until you decide to speak with your full voice, and I don't mean volume, I mean truth. Real, grounded, unapologetic truth. You don't need louder words, you need aligned ones. You need a voice that speaks from your chest, not your mask. Because the moment you start saying what's real, people will feel it. Not everyone will like it, but they'll feel it. And the right people, the ones you're aching to find, will lean in, not pull away. You see, being heard doesn't begin with other people. It begins with you, hearing yourself again, trusting that what you say matters, that your experience, your feelings, your boundaries, your pain, they matter. And I promise you this, once you reclaim your voice, everything starts to change. Your dating life stops being about scripts and strategy. It becomes about resonance. Your relationships deepen not through grand speeches, but through simple, honest moments. And most of all, you stop feeling like a ghost in your own life, because your words, when crafted with care and courage, are more than noise. They are presence, they are power. They are the beginning of a new story, one where you're no longer waiting to be heard because you've already started speaking. And the world, it begins to listen. Let's talk about your voice, not just the sound that comes from your mouth, but something much deeper. Your voice is your signature. It is your identity in sound. When people hear you speak, they're not just processing information. They're hearing who you are, or at least who you believe yourself to be. Now, most people don't realize this, but your voice carries your entire emotional blueprint. Your confidence or your shame, your calm or your chaos, your truth or the story you've been trained to tell. Think about that. You can't fake your voice. You can manipulate it. You can mask it. You can wrap it in charm or bravado or intellect, but the human ear is far more intelligent than we give it credit for. We hear hesitation, we hear fear, we hear neediness, arrogance, tension, even when no words say it out loud. And so, if your voice is disconnected from your truth, people feel it, even if they can't explain it, something doesn't land. It's the reason a conversation goes flat. It's the reason a date loses energy. It's the reason a job interview or a first impression just doesn't click. So let's go deeper. Most men never got to own their voice. From an early age, you may have learned that emotion was dangerous, that speaking vulnerably was weak, that honesty was risky, that needing someone would make you less of a man. So what do? We adapt. We build versions of our voice that keep us safe. We become funny or stoic or detached. We become smooth in public and silent in private. We master logic and lose language for feelings. And over time, we forget what our real voice even sounds like. Let me be very clear. Your voice, your true voice, is not about being loud, dominant, or polished. It's about alignment. It's about finding the place inside you where who you are, what you believe, and what you say become one. And when that happens, your voice begins to resonate. Literally, people stop just hearing you, they feel you. They trust you, not because of what you're saying, but because they sense that you're telling the truth. And that's the key. Resonance is not a trick, it's not a technique. It's what happens when your voice comes from a place of wholeness, when it's rooted in breath, body, and belief. Let me give you a very simple shift that changes everything. Before you speak, breathe, not a shallow inhale. A deep grounding breath from your belly, because the breath is where your voice begins, and it's also where your presence begins. And here's the powerful part. When you begin to speak from a place of grounded truth, you don't need to perform anymore. You stop worrying about what to say next. You stop trying to impress. You start trusting that who you are, as you are, is enough. And you know what happens when you speak that way. People listen, they lean in, because authenticity is magnetic. Because groundedness is rare. Because a man who knows himself speaks with a kind of quiet power that no noise can compete with. So I invite you, not just today, but every day, to begin reclaiming your voice, not to be louder, not to be perfect, but to be true, because when you speak from that place, from the core of who you are, you begin to shape not just how the world sees you, but how you see yourself. And in that moment, you stop living someone else's script and start speaking your life into existence. Let's talk about words. Not in the abstract, but in the real, daily way they show up in your life, in your texts, your voice notes, your conversations, your silences. Words are tools, but too often men use them as weapons, or worse, as armor. We've been conditioned to use language to defend, deflect, impress, manipulate, but rarely to connect. Because connection requires exposure, and exposure to most men feels like danger. Think about the last time you really wanted to say something vulnerable. Maybe to a woman, maybe to a friend, maybe just to yourself. Something like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel invisible. I'm scared she'll leave. I need help. But instead of saying that, you laughed, you brushed it off, you changed the subject, or maybe you got sarcastic or cold or angry because those tools feel safer than truth. And I understand, I've done it too. We're not taught to speak to be understood. We're taught to speak to maintain position. To keep power, to not lose face. But here's what no one tells you. There is no strength in hiding. When your words become armor, people stop feeling you. They feel the shell, and that's why dating feels shallow. That's why conversations don't go anywhere. That's why you can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Let me ask you a simple but confronting question. Are your words building bridges or walls? Are you using language to move closer to people or to hold them at a safe distance? Every interaction is an opportunity to build something. But if your words are reactive, defensive, performative, you're not building, you're surviving, and survival mode can't create intimacy. It can't hold emotional weight. It can't open hearts, not hers, not yours. But here's the shift. And it's subtle but powerful. What if you treated every conversation as an act of creation, not performance? What if you spoke not to win but to weave, not to appear but to express high integrity? Because here's the truth that changes everything. Real connection doesn't happen when you impress someone. It happens when you reveal something, and that kind of revealing, it doesn't require perfect words. It requires honest ones. You don't need to be clever. You don't need to say what you think they want to hear. You need to say what's real, what's yours. I was nervous to message you. I don't always know how to explain what I feel. I'm working on not shutting down when I feel misunderstood. These are not weak statements. These are strong foundations. Because when you speak like this with clarity and emotional risk, something powerful happens. You give other people permission to be honest too. And suddenly your relationships aren't built on strategy, they're built on truth. That's what makes them stable. That's what makes them last. Now, let's be clear, this doesn't mean you say everything that crosses your mind. This isn't about emotional dumping. It's about intention. It's about being deliberate with your words, not hiding behind silence or smothering with noise. Julian Treasure talks about this, how great communicators are not just heard, they're felt, because they speak with purpose. With care, with congruence. They're not trying to dominate the space, they're inhabiting it. That's the kind of man people listen to. That's the kind of man women feel safe around. That's the kind of man who can sit in silence and still communicate presence. So I challenge you today, this week, to notice your words. Are they armor? Are they weapons? Or are they tools to build something worth standing in? Because when you start choosing words that align with your heart, not your fear, you stop performing masculinity and you start embodying it. And the world around you, it begins to shift, not because you spoke louder, but because you finally spoke true. There's a language many men never learn to speak, not because they're slow, not because they're broken, but because no one taught them how. It's the language of emotion. Now, that word, emotion, can trigger something in men. Discomfort, resistance, even shame. You might have learned to see feelings as chaotic, untrustworthy, maybe even dangerous. Something to manage, control, or suppress entirely. But let me ask you this. How can you master something you can't even name? How can you shape your relationships, your career, your world, if you don't know the emotional tools you're holding? Most men were taught to reduce everything they feel into one of three words: fine, angry, or tired. But under the surface of those words is an entire emotional vocabulary you were never given. What you call anger might really be disappointment. What you call tired might be loneliness. What you call fine might be numbness. And when you don't know how to express what you're feeling, when the emotional signal can't find a name, your body starts to carry it instead. That shows up as anxiety, short temper, disconnection. It shows up in your posture, your voice, your eyes. It leaks out in sarcasm, silence, or shutdown. And the worst part, the people around you don't know how to respond because you're not saying anything real. That's not your fault, but it is now your responsibility. Because emotional fluency isn't just about being able to talk about your feelings. It's about being able to live inside your body without going numb. It's about recognizing that emotional strength isn't the absence of feeling. It's the ability to sit with it, speak it, and share it without shame. Let me give you a powerful truth. The more precise your emotional language becomes, the more power you gain. Think about it. A man who can say, I feel rejected, instead of just I'm pissed, has awareness. A man who can say, I feel disconnected from you, and I'm scared I'll be left, that man has depth. And depth is rare. Depth is magnetic. Depth is what separates you from the crowd of surface-level, emotionally muted noise. Women feel this, friends feel this, you feel this, because suddenly you're not lashing out, ghosting, or pulling away. You're naming it, you're staying in the moment, you're showing up as a man who is emotionally available, not emotionally reactive. And let me be clear, emotional fluency is not about oversharing or being dramatic. It's about precision. It's about being able to say with clarity, this is what's alive in me right now, this is what I need, this is where I'm hurt, and this is where I'm healing. That kind of language builds trust, not just with others, with yourself. Because when you can name your experience, you reclaim agency over it. You move from confusion to clarity, from shame to choice, and that, right there, is the beginning of emotional authority. So if you've spent years feeling numb or emotionally lost, here's the invitation. Don't try to fix everything overnight. Just start naming things, one word, one feeling, one breath at a time. You can even say, I don't know what I feel yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. That is emotional strength. Because when you give yourself permission to feel, you give others permission to meet the real you. And in that space, not performance, not control, but truth, your voice becomes powerful, not just because it's loud, but because it's alive. So speak your emotions, even when they're messy. Speak them especially when they're messy, because clarity begins where silence ends. And the more emotional language you learn to speak, the more fully you learn to live. Now we turn to something deeper than just words or voice. We turn to resonance. Not in the musical sense, but in the human one. That moment when someone speaks, and something in you vibrates with truth. Resonance is what makes your words land, not just heard, felt. And in a world overflowing with noise, being felt is what separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. But here's the paradox: you don't create resonance by trying to be impressive, you create it by being present. Presence, it's a word we throw around but rarely understand. Presence isn't about saying the perfect thing. It's about being fully where you are with nothing in the way, not your fear, not your ego, not your mental rehearsal of what to say next. Just you, right here, now, and here's where most men get stuck. They want connection, real, deep, electric connection, but they're not in their own body long enough to feel it. They are stuck in performance, in trying to be liked, in scanning for rejection before it even happens. And in that place your voice can't resonate because it's not grounded. It's hovering above the moment, trying to control, trying to calculate. But true resonance requires surrender. It requires trust. Let me explain. Resonance happens when your inner state and your spoken word are aligned. If you say, I'm okay, but your voice is tight and your eyes are distant, there's no resonance. But if you say, honestly, I'm struggling today, and you mean it, your voice drops into your body, and suddenly people lean in because we are wired for truth. We crave it, especially now when most of what we hear is filtered, edited, performed. Truth cuts through all of that. And here's the beautiful thing: you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to dominate the room to be remembered. You just need to speak from your center, slowly, clearly, and with care. Because when you do that, your words begin to carry weight. Not heaviness, but gravity. They begin to pull people in. I've seen it happen in rooms full of executives. I've seen it in therapists' offices. I've seen it in quiet cafes between two people falling in love. The most powerful voice is the one that's fully present. So how do you cultivate this? You slow down. You breathe before you speak. You feel your feet on the ground. You connect with your chest, not just your head. And then you speak only what's true. It might be small. I don't have the answer. I feel nervous right now. I really care about this. But those small, honest truths, they build bridges that no performance ever could. Because when you speak from resonance, you're not broadcasting. You're not trying to prove, you're simply revealing, and that kind of communication is unforgettable. It's the reason some people can say almost nothing and change a room. It's the reason someone's voice can linger with you for hours after they've gone. Because when a voice is grounded in truth, delivered in presence, and stripped of ego, it vibrates something ancient in us. Something we trust, something we want to move closer to. That's what women are looking for, not just confidence, but coherence. Not just charm, but truth they can feel. Not noise, not performance, resonance. So I invite you to practice this. Not just in conversations that matter, but in the everyday. Speak a little slower, breathe a little deeper. Feel your words before you say them, and let them rise from somewhere real. Because when you do, your voice becomes more than sound. It becomes a signal, a beacon, a call, and the right people, the ones who are meant to walk with you, build with you, love with you, they will hear it. We've come all this way from the sound of your voice, to the words you choose, to the emotions you reveal, to the resonance you create. But now we arrive at the place that matters most, you. Because in the end, everything we've spoken about your voice, your language, your presence, none of it means anything unless you take responsibility for it. Responsibility, not in the punishing, heavy way that word is often used, not in the sense of blame, but in the sense of power, of ownership, because here's the truth. No one is coming to teach you how to speak as the man you're meant to be. No one is handing you a permission slip to express your full emotional self. No one is going to pull the words from your chest and place them perfectly in your mouth. That's yours to do, and yes, it's confronting, but it's also incredibly freeing. Because the moment you stop outsourcing your voice to other people's opinions, to fear, to past conditioning, you begin to write your own language. You begin to craft a way of speaking, thinking, and being that actually feels like you, and from that place, you don't chase connection, you don't force intimacy, you attract it, not through manipulation or tactics, but through alignment, through the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are, and is no longer afraid to be seen. Now, here's something uncomfortable but essential. If your life is filled with shallow conversations, misaligned relationships, a constant sense that people don't get you, it's not just them. It's the signal you're sending. If you speak from a masked self, you will attract people who respond to that mask. If you speak only from performance, you will attract people who are performing too. But if you begin to speak from your truth, if you let the world hear your real voice, you will begin to build a life that reflects that man. And let me be very clear, this is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before you were told to be anything else. Before shame, before rejection, before the armor, your voice, your real one, is still there. It's quieter, maybe. But it's not lost. You find it by listening first. You find it in the stillness, in the breath before words. You find it when you stop performing and start feeling, and when you speak from that place, the people who matter will hear you. They might not understand you right away, but they'll feel something real, and that's where everything changes. So what does this mean for your dating life, your friendships, your work? It means this. Every room you walk into, every woman you sit across from, every moment of silence you once feared, they are all invitations. Invitations to speak with more care, more presence, more courage, and more truth. You don't need to be anyone else. You don't need a perfect script. You don't need louder volume or sharper lines. You just need to stop hiding. Because when your voice, your heart, and your words begin to align, you become undeniable, not because you're flawless, but because you're real. And in a world full of noise, realness resonates. So speak, not to be liked, not to be safe, but to be known. Because when you finally speak as yourself, you stop echoing someone else's story and begin to write your own. And that, my friend, is how you shape your world. So here we are. You've listened all the way through. That tells me something about you, something most men won't admit out loud. You want more, not just more attention, more substance. More real, more of you finally showing up in the spaces where you used to disappear. And I need you to hear this, man to man. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not too much or not enough. You're just waiting to become fully expressed. And that starts with the voice inside you, the one you've been silencing for too long. Don't silence it anymore. If this message landed for you, if something moved in you today, don't keep it quiet, let it breathe. Write a comment, share what part hit home, let someone else see you. That's how we grow together. And if you felt this, I mean really felt this, then like the video so the algorithm knows this isn't just another piece of content. It's a signal. Share it with a brother who's drifting. Subscribe because we're just getting started. This isn't surface level motivation. This is about reclaiming your voice so you can reclaim your life. So speak up, speak true, shape your world, and I'll see you in the next one. You've got this, truly.